The night everything changed, Evan Carter stood alone on a cracked outdoor basketball court in Chicago, gripping a torn ball with numb fingers. Snowflakes melted on his cheeks, mixing with tears he refused to wipe away. He whispered into the empty air, "If anyone's listening, just let me be good at something." He didn't know it yet, but the world was listening. Evan Carter learned the sound of disappointment before he learned how to dream. It lived in the quiet hallways of the orphanage, in the soft squeak of shoes walking past his room, and in the careful voices adults used when they thought he was too young to understand rejection. At 15 years old, Evan had already been passed over more times than he could count. Families came, smiled, asked questions, and left with someone else. Each time, Evan told himself it didn't matter, but his chest always felt heavier afterward. The orphanage sat on the edge of a tired neighborhood in Chicago, surrounded by chain-link fences and buildings that had seen better days. Evan shared a small room with 2 other boys, but loneliness followed him anyway. At night, when the lights went out, he stared at the ceiling and wondered what it felt like to belong somewhere. Sometimes he imagined a voice calling his name with excitement instead of obligation. Sometimes he imagined a door opening just for him. During the day, Evan stayed quiet. He did his chores, nodded when spoken to, and avoided trouble. Teachers described him as polite and forgettable. Other kids called him Ghost, because he moved through rooms without being noticed. Evan pretended the nickname didn't hurt, but it settled deep inside him, shaping the way he saw himself. Basketball was the only place where Evan felt visible, even if no one was watching. Every evening, after homework and dinner, he slipped on his hoodie and walked to the abandoned community court 3 blocks away. The pavement was cracked, weeds grew through the concrete, and the metal rim leaned slightly to the left. The net had disappeared years ago. Still, Evan loved that court. It asked nothing from him except effort. He played alone most nights, dribbling until his palms burned and his arms ached. He missed far more shots than he made. The ball bounced wildly, sometimes rolling into the street, forcing Evan to chase it while cars passed without slowing. When frustration rose, he swallowed it. No one was there to cheer or laugh, and that somehow made it easier. One winter evening, the air was sharper than usual. Evan's breath puffed white as he practiced layups under the flickering streetlight. His fingers were numb, but he kept going. Basketball was the only thing that quieted the noise in his head. Each bounce felt like a heartbeat, steady and alive. When a shot rimmed out and the ball rolled behind the old gym building, Evan sighed and followed it. That was when he noticed a torn duffel bag sitting against the wall. It looked out of place, too clean for the area. Evan hesitated, glancing around. The street was empty. The wind rattled a loose sign above him. Curiosity pulled him closer. Inside the bag was a pair of black basketball shoes, spotless and new, their surface catching the weak light. Evan frowned. Shoes like that didn't belong here. He crouched, touched them, and felt a strange warmth beneath his fingertips. His heart thumped loudly as he slipped them on. They fit perfectly, like they had been waiting for him. When Evan stood, a quiet shock ran through his legs. He took a step, then another, testing the ground. Something felt different. Lighter. He bounced the ball. It came back to his hands smoothly, obediently. Evan swallowed. He took a running start and jumped, higher than he ever had before. His breath caught as his fingers brushed the rim. He landed hard, laughing in disbelief, staring down at his feet. "Okay," he whispered, voice shaking. "Okay." He didn't understand what had happened, but for the first time in his life, Evan felt chosen. That night, as he walked back to the orphanage, the city seemed quieter, like it was holding its breath. Evan lay in bed, shoes tucked under his mattress, heart racing with hope and fear. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was certain. Something had finally noticed him. Evan barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the echo of that jump, the strange lightness in his legs, the way the ball had obeyed his hands. Morning came too fast. At breakfast, he stirred his cereal until it turned soggy, barely hearing the voices around him. His mind stayed on the shoes hidden beneath his bed, waiting. All day at school, Evan's foot tapped under his desk. Teachers talked. Pages turned. None of it stayed with him. He kept wondering if the magic would fade once the sun rose, if the shoes would feel ordinary again. Doubt pressed against his chest, heavy and familiar. By the final bell, he was already halfway out the door. That evening, Evan returned to the abandoned court. The sky burned orange and purple as the sun dipped low. The court looked the same as always, cracked and tired, but Evan felt different stepping onto it. His hands trembled as he tied the laces, pulling them snug. He stood still for a moment, listening to his own breathing. Just try, he told himself softly. He dribbled once. The ball snapped back to his palm with perfect rhythm. Evan's eyes widened. He dribbled again, then crossed over, his body moving without hesitation. A laugh burst from his chest, surprised and sharp. He drove toward the hoop and jumped. The rim came easily this time. He dunked, landing hard, laughing again as the sound echoed through the empty lot. He played for hours. Spin moves. Jump shots. Layups from impossible angles. Each motion felt natural, like something that had always lived inside him. Sweat soaked his hoodie, but Evan didn't stop. He couldn't. Fear mixed with joy, and joy kept winning. The next evening, Evan wasn't alone. Two boys from the neighborhood leaned against the fence, watching quietly. Evan noticed them only after sinking 3 shots in a row. His heart jumped. Instinct told him to leave, to disappear like always. Instead, he kept playing. "Yo," one boy called out. "You on the school team or something?" Evan shrugged, wiping his face. "Nah." The boys exchanged looks. One of them stepped closer. "Man, that was crazy." By the end of the week, more kids showed up. They circled the court, calling out in surprise as Evan crossed defenders and soared toward the rim. Laughter replaced silence. Cheers replaced echoes. Evan felt their eyes on him, and for once, it didn't make him shrink. A boy named Marcus challenged him to a game. "Let's see if you're real," Marcus said, grinning. Evan nodded, heart pounding. When the game started, something strange happened. He wasn't scared. He passed when needed, shot when open, trusted his instincts. When he scored the final basket, Marcus bent over, hands on his knees, laughing. "Okay," Marcus said. "You're different." The attention spread fast. Phones came out. Videos were posted. Evan tried not to think about it, but numbers climbed, comments appeared, and his name traveled further than he ever had. One afternoon, a tall man in a gray jacket stood near the fence. He watched without speaking, eyes sharp. After Evan finished playing, the man approached. "You got a minute?" he asked. Evan nodded, cautious. "I'm Coach Reynolds," the man said. "I coach over at Lincoln High." Evan's stomach tightened. "Okay." Coach Reynolds smiled slightly. "Where'd you learn to play like that?" Evan hesitated. The truth felt impossible. "Just practicing." The coach studied him, then nodded. "You ever think about playing organized ball?" Evan's throat went dry. "I'm not on a team." "You should be," Coach Reynolds said. "I'll talk to the school." As the coach walked away, Evan stood frozen. Marcus clapped him on the back. "Told you, man. You're going somewhere." That night, Evan lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. Hope buzzed through him, bright and terrifying. He pulled the shoes from under his bed and held them close. For the first time, the court had noticed him back. The days that followed felt unreal. Evan's routine changed without him planning it. He woke earlier, ate faster, and counted the hours until he could return to the court. His body felt stronger, his movements sharper, but his emotions stayed tangled. Some mornings he smiled for no reason. Other times, fear crept in quietly, asking how long this could last. At the orphanage, staff members began to notice. Mrs. Allen, who ran the front desk, paused one afternoon as Evan rushed past. "You look happy," she said, surprised. Evan stopped, unsure how to answer. "I think I am," he said slowly, testing the words. She smiled, gentle and warm. "You deserve that." On the court, Evan learned something new. The shoes didn't just help him score. They helped him see. He noticed open teammates, felt the rhythm of the game, understood spacing without being taught. When he made a mistake, he adjusted naturally. Confidence settled into his shoulders, changing the way he stood, the way he spoke. Still, doubt waited in the background. Late one night, after everyone left, Evan sat alone at center court. He stared at the hoop, listening to distant traffic. "What happens if this stops?" he asked the empty air. No answer came. He stood, took one last shot, and watched it fall cleanly through the rim. Evan exhaled, steadying himself. Whatever this was, he would use it. He would work. He would keep showing up. As he walked home under the streetlights, his shadow stretched long on the pavement. For the first time, Evan didn't feel like a ghost. He felt real. The court no longer felt abandoned. It breathed with voices, footsteps, and hope. Evan carried that feeling with him, tucked deep in his chest. Tomorrow waited, uncertain and bright. He didn't know where this path led, only that it had opened. And this time, he wasn't walking it alone. The city watched quietly, unaware that a new story had begun there. Fame arrived in Evan Carter's life without asking permission. One morning, he woke up to Marcus shaking his shoulder, phone glowing in his hand. "Bro," Marcus whispered urgently, eyes wide. "You're everywhere." Evan squinted at the screen and saw himself mid-jump, frozen in the air, comments flying past faster than he could read. His stomach flipped, excitement and fear colliding at once. At school, whispers followed him down the hallway. Heads turned. Phones lifted. Evan felt heat rise to his face. Teachers paused when he entered classrooms, suddenly remembering his name. A girl he had never spoken to smiled at him like they shared a secret. Evan nodded awkwardly, unsure where to put his hands, wishing he could disappear and stay at the same time. After practice, Coach Reynolds gathered the team. "Listen up," he said, clapping once. "Scouts are coming to the next few games. Play smart." His eyes lingered on Evan. "Especially you." Evan swallowed and nodded. The room buzzed with energy, but his chest tightened. Expectations had weight, and he felt them pressing down already. The first televised game felt unreal. Bright lights flooded the court. Cameras hovered. Evan's name echoed from the announcer's booth. When he stepped onto the floor, the noise hit him like a wave. Cheers, chants, applause. He forced a smile, heart racing, legs humming with nervous energy. The game moved fast. Evan played well, better than ever. He scored, assisted, defended. Each basket brought louder cheers. When he dunked in the second quarter, the crowd erupted, and Evan felt something dangerous bloom inside him. For a moment he believed every shout. After the game, reporters crowded around. Microphones pushed toward his face. "How does it feel?" one asked. "What's your secret?" another demanded. Evan laughed nervously. "I just work hard," he said, repeating the safest answer he knew. Cameras flashed. The questions blurred together. That night, alone in his room, Evan replayed everything. The cheers echoed in his head, but so did the silence that followed. He reached under his bed and pulled out the shoes. They looked the same, quiet and ordinary. "Don't leave me," he whispered, embarrassed by the plea. Offers came quickly. Colleges sent letters. Coaches called. The orphanage director hugged him tightly, eyes wet with pride. "You're an inspiration," she said. Evan smiled, but something twisted inside him. He hadn't changed. The world just saw him differently now. Marcus stayed close, grounding him. "Remember when it was just us and that busted rim?" Marcus said one afternoon, laughing. Evan smiled back, grateful. "Yeah," he said softly. "I remember." During another big game, disaster almost struck. Late in the third quarter, Evan stumbled. The ball bounced away. The crowd gasped. Evan's eyes dropped to his feet. One lace was loose. Panic shot through him, sharp and cold. His hands shook as he tied it, blocking out the noise. Coach Reynolds shouted from the sideline. "You good?" Evan nodded quickly, forcing calm. When play resumed, he moved faster, sharper, as if trying to outrun fear itself. He finished the game strong, sealing the win with a final shot. The crowd roared again, but Evan barely heard it. In the locker room, he sat quietly, breathing hard. Sweat dripped from his chin. Marcus nudged him. "You scared me back there," he said lightly. Evan tried to laugh. "Yeah, me too." Late that night, Evan lay awake staring at the ceiling. Fame felt loud even in the dark. Notifications buzzed nonstop. Praise poured in, but it didn't settle his nerves. Instead, it raised a question he couldn't ignore. Was he earning this or borrowing it? At practice the next day, Evan snapped at a teammate for missing a pass. The words left his mouth before he could stop them. The gym fell quiet. Evan froze, shame rushing in. "Sorry," he muttered. Coach Reynolds watched him closely but said nothing. After practice, the coach pulled him aside. "Pressure changes people," he said calmly. "Don't let it decide who you are." Evan nodded, grateful and unsettled. He wanted to be strong, but strength felt slippery lately. The city embraced him. Billboards featured his face. Kids wore his number. Evan signed autographs until his wrist hurt. Each smile he gave felt practiced, less real. At night, he returned to the orphanage, where the walls hadn't changed, where memories still clung. One evening, he sat on his bed holding the shoes, turning them over in his hands. "Is it you?" he asked quietly. "Or is it me?" The shoes gave no answer. The next game loomed larger than all the rest. Scouts filled the stands. The stakes were clear. Evan tied his laces slowly, heart pounding. As he stood, he caught his reflection in the locker room mirror. For a moment, he didn't recognize himself. When he stepped onto the court, the crowd rose as one. Evan inhaled deeply, steadying himself. The ball tipped into the air, and the game began. As he ran, jumped, and scored, Evan felt both powerful and fragile. Fame had opened every door, but it had also placed him under a spotlight he couldn't escape. And somewhere beneath the cheers, a quiet fear followed him, waiting for the moment he might fall. College life arrived like a storm Evan Carter had not prepared for. The campus was loud, crowded, and filled with players who had been stars long before anyone learned his name. The gym smelled of polish and sweat, and banners hung from the ceiling like silent reminders of expectations. Evan walked through it all with squared shoulders, but inside, his confidence trembled. Practices were harder than anything he had known. Coaches shouted instructions faster than he could process them. Teammates moved with sharp purpose, their eyes measuring him. Evan pushed himself, relying on the shoes to carry him through drills. They responded, quick and precise, but something felt different now. Every movement demanded more effort, as if the shoes were asking for something in return. At night, Evan lay awake in his dorm room, staring at the dark ceiling. The cheers from games replayed in his head, but so did every mistake. He flexed his feet beneath the blanket, feeling the outline of the shoes nearby. "I just need to keep up," he whispered to himself, voice tight with worry. The pressure followed him everywhere. Reporters waited after practice. Social media buzzed with opinions, praise mixing with criticism. One bad play sparked harsh comments. Evan read them all, even when he told himself not to. Each word settled deep, feeding a quiet fear that grew heavier by the day. During one intense practice, Evan missed several shots in a row. Coach Reynolds blew his whistle sharply. "Reset," he barked. Evan nodded, chest heaving. A teammate sighed loudly nearby. Heat rushed to Evan's face. He clenched his fists, anger and shame twisting together. Later, alone in the empty gym, Evan tried shooting without the shoes. He wore plain sneakers, hoping to prove something to himself. The ball bounced off the rim again and again. His form felt wrong. His timing slipped. Frustration boiled over, and he slammed the ball against the floor. "I can't do this," he muttered, breath shaking. He dropped onto the bench, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. For the first time since finding the shoes, doubt cracked his belief wide open. Was the talent ever his? Or had he built everything on borrowed magic? Games grew more demanding. Defenders studied him closely, adjusting to his moves. Evan felt the shoes respond by pushing him harder, urging faster cuts, higher jumps. After games, his legs ached deeply, a pain that lingered longer than before. Ice packs became routine. Smiles felt forced. Marcus called often, his voice familiar and grounding. "Don't lose yourself," Marcus warned gently. Evan laughed it off, but the words stuck. In quiet moments, he barely recognized the person he was becoming. Confidence had sharpened into fear, and joy had thinned into relief. One night, Evan dreamed he was running across an endless court. The lines stretched away from him, unreachable. His feet were bare, slapping helplessly against the floor. The crowd watched in silence as he struggled forward. He woke with a gasp, heart racing, sheets twisted around his legs. The next morning, exhaustion clung to him. During practice, Coach Reynolds pulled him aside. "You're carrying too much," the coach said quietly. Evan looked away. "I can handle it," he insisted, though his voice lacked strength. Coach Reynolds studied him, concern etched across his face. During a nationally televised game, Evan felt the strain peak. His movements were sharp but frantic. Midway through the second quarter, he stumbled after a hard landing. Pain shot through his calf. The crowd fell silent as he stayed down for a moment too long. Evan pushed himself up, jaw clenched, waving off help. In the locker room at halftime, he sat quietly, breathing through the pain. Teammates avoided his eyes. Evan stared at the shoes, sweat dripping onto the floor. "Why does this hurt?" he whispered. No answer came. He finished the game, but victory felt hollow. Applause washed over him without warmth. That night, Evan limped back to his dorm, every step heavy. He collapsed onto his bed, staring at the shoes resting by the door. Slowly he reached for them, then stopped. His hand shook. "What are you taking from me?" he asked softly. The question hung in the air, unanswered. The realization settled quietly but firmly. Magic had opened the door, but it was demanding a price. Evan didn't yet know what that price would be, only that he was already paying it. As he turned off the light, darkness filled the room. Evan lay still, listening to his own breathing, feeling the weight of the path ahead. For the first time since his rise began, fear outweighed excitement. The shoes waited in silence, and Evan understood something at last. Nothing powerful comes without a cost. The championship game arrived wrapped in noise and light. Evan Carter sat alone on the bench, hands clasped, staring at the polished floor. The arena pulsed with energy as thousands of voices blended into one restless roar. Banners waved. Cameras hovered. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for, the night meant to seal his future. His duffel bag rested at his feet. Inside it were the shoes. Evan could feel their presence without touching them, like a quiet pressure against his thoughts. His legs still ached from the last game, a dull reminder of how far he had pushed himself. He flexed his calf slowly, jaw tightening. Around him, teammates joked and stretched, their confidence loud and careless. Marcus leaned over from the next seat. "You good?" he asked softly, eyes searching Evan's face. Evan forced a smile. "Yeah. Just thinking." Marcus nodded. "Big night. Just play your game." "My game," Evan repeated silently, and the words echoed without answer. Coach Reynolds gathered the team, his voice firm. "This is it," he said. "Play smart. Trust each other." His gaze lingered on Evan. Not pressure this time. Trust. Evan swallowed hard. As the announcer called his name, the crowd erupted. Evan stood, heart pounding, and walked toward the scorer's table. He knelt, opened his bag, and froze. His fingers brushed the shoes, smooth and familiar. A memory flashed through his mind. The empty court. The first jump. The feeling of being chosen. Then another memory followed. Sleepless nights. Evan's breathing grew shallow. Slowly, deliberately, he pushed the shoes back into the bag. From the corner of the locker room, he pulled out his old sneakers, worn and faded, the soles thin with use. Coach Reynolds noticed immediately. "Evan?" he said, confused. Evan met his eyes. His voice trembled, but he spoke clearly. "I need to know who I am without them." The coach studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "All right," he said quietly. The crowd murmured as Evan stepped onto the court. Whispers rippled through the stands. Cameras zoomed in. Evan ignored them all. His hands felt lighter without the shoes, his feet closer to the floor. The ball tipped into the air. The game was brutal. Evan missed his first shot. Then another. His chest tightened as the crowd groaned. A defender stole the ball cleanly, and Evan stumbled, nearly falling. Heat rushed to his face, shame burning hot. "Shake it off," Marcus shouted, clapping his hands. Evan nodded, forcing himself to breathe. He focused on the basics. Defense. Passing. Positioning. He boxed out harder, moved his feet, stayed patient. When he finally made a layup, relief washed over him so strongly his knees nearly buckled. The score stayed close. Every possession mattered. Evan's legs burned, sweat stinging his eyes. He could feel every step now, every landing sending a jolt upward. But something else grew alongside the pain. Belief. Late in the third quarter, Evan drove toward the basket and got knocked down hard. He lay on the floor for a moment, staring at the lights. The arena fell silent. Evan pushed himself up slowly, ignoring the ache, lifting one hand to show he was okay. Applause followed, steady and respectful. In the fourth quarter, the game tightened further. The opposing team pulled ahead by 3. Time ticked away. Evan's heart hammered as he glanced at the clock. With 30 seconds left, Marcus passed him the ball. Evan hesitated, then drove. A defender cut him off. Evan stopped, pivoted, and kicked the ball back out. Marcus sank the shot. The crowd exploded. Tie game. On the final possession, Evan received the ball again. His lungs burned. The noise faded. He remembered the cracked court, the lonely nights, the promise he had made to himself. He jumped. Not as high as before. Not magically. But enough. The ball left his fingertips and kissed the backboard before dropping through the net. The buzzer sounded. For a split second, everything was still. Then the arena erupted. Evan collapsed to the floor, laughing and crying at once. Teammates swarmed him, shouting, lifting him up. Marcus hugged him tightly. "You did it," he said, voice breaking. Evan looked up at the scoreboard, tears blurring his vision. He hadn't been perfect. He hadn't been unstoppable. He had been real. As confetti rained down, Evan closed his eyes and breathed deeply. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time, it felt like it belonged to him. The shoes stayed in the bag, and Evan walked forward on his own. Evan Carter never wore the magical shoes again. After the championship, they sat quietly in a corner of his room, untouched, a reminder of the choice he had made. He thought about them often, memories flickering of the first jump, the endless hours of practice, the cheering crowds. But he didn't need them. He had learned something more important. Skill was only half of the equation. The other half was belief. College basketball continued, but now Evan played differently. He moved with confidence that came from hard work and self-trust rather than magic. His teammates noticed the change. Marcus grinned during practice. "You've got a new kind of fire," he said. Evan nodded, a quiet smile crossing his face. He felt it too. The weight of expectations still pressed on him, but it was lighter, manageable. It didn't define him. Games were still tough. Defenders studied him, strategies shifted mid-game, and the clock always ticked faster than he wanted. But Evan's mindset had shifted. When he missed a shot, he shook it off. When he scored, he celebrated with genuine joy rather than relief. Each step, each jump, each pass felt earned. His sweat, his exhaustion, his victories, they were all his own. The city that had once lifted him into the spotlight still watched, but Evan felt the eyes less. Fame was no longer intoxicating, it was background noise. He played because it was what he loved. He pushed his body and mind, not to impress, but to test himself. In this, he found freedom. Years passed. Evan's name grew in college circles, but not in headlines. He wasn't the star of every billboard. He wasn't in every viral highlight reel. And yet, he felt more complete than he had in his first nights with the magical shoes. Achievement without truth felt hollow, he realized, but achievement born of perseverance had depth. One crisp afternoon, Evan returned to the old abandoned court where it had all begun. The chain-link fence sagged, weeds pushed stubbornly through the cracks, the rim leaned to one side, and the net was still gone. He knelt, tracing his fingers along the worn asphalt, remembering his first nights alone with the ball. His old shoes felt worn under his hands, the soles thin, the leather softened by years of play. The court smelled of rain and time, familiar and comforting. Kids from the neighborhood noticed him. Their eyes widened, unsure if he was a coach, a player, or a ghost from stories they'd heard. One boy approached, holding a ball awkwardly. "Are you Evan Carter?" he asked, voice tinged with awe. Evan smiled gently. "I am," he said softly. "Do you want to play?" The boy's face lit up. He nodded eagerly, and soon, a small crowd gathered. Evan showed them fundamentals, guiding their hands, encouraging their effort. He laughed when they missed, clapped when they made shots, and told stories of persistence, mistakes, and triumphs that had nothing to do with magic. They listened, rapt. "You don't need special shoes to be great," Evan said quietly. "You need belief, effort, and heart." The kids repeated the words, unsure but hopeful. Evan felt warmth bloom in his chest. He had come full circle, returning to the place where it all began, not as a legend, but as someone who had learned, grown, and chosen himself. Evenings came, and Evan walked home under the glow of streetlights. The city felt alive, indifferent, and welcoming all at once. Each step was deliberate, steady, and fully his own. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the weight of eyes on him or expectations pressing on his shoulders. He simply walked. Sometimes, he thought about the magical shoes. They remained where he had left them, still waiting in silence. He considered taking them up again, testing their magic once more. But he didn't. Evan knew their power wasn't meant to define him anymore. The choice to play on his own, to face challenges without shortcuts, had already given him the most valuable lesson of all. Years later, Evan pursued a professional basketball career. Not as the boy who had been carried by magic, not as the viral sensation, but as a player who had earned every step. He faced setbacks, losses, and injuries, but he never faltered in spirit. He played with integrity, and that integrity carried him further than any fleeting magic ever could. During interviews, reporters asked how he became so skilled, how he handled fame, and what it meant to be a champion. Evan spoke simply. "I kept showing up," he said. "I practiced, I failed, I tried again. I never stopped believing in myself." When he retired, Evan returned once more to the old court. The city had changed, new buildings risen, some old ones torn down, but the court still stood, steadfast. He knelt on the asphalt, closing his eyes. Memories of fear, hope, triumph, and doubt washed over him. The journey had been long, but each step had been his own. A young girl, ball clutched to her chest, approached him shyly. "Can you teach me?" she asked. Evan smiled, standing. "Of course," he said. He showed her stance, dribble, and shot. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the cracked asphalt, and the court was alive again, with new dreams and possibilities. As he walked home that night, Evan felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. He had discovered magic once, yes, but he had discovered something far greater, himself. The world would always change, challenges would always rise, and life would always test him. But he now knew the most important truth. Belief in oneself is the greatest magic of all. Evan Carter had walked the road of fame, temptation, and challenge. He had stumbled, learned, chosen, and grown. And now, with each step, he walked forward on his own, carrying the lessons, the strength, and the heart he had earned. The end. Don't forget to give this video a like, share it with someone, comment, and subscribe for more videos.